Corruption and how to deal with it in the 12th five-year plan. Corruption has been a burning issue in our day-to-day life in India today. Corruption has entered in all walks of our life. Corruption cannot be dealt with or mitigated on an individual basis as and when it occurs. The entire issue of corruption has to be approached, therefore, in a systematic manner at the planning level itself. Our 5-year plans, now the 12th 5-year plan is going on, are the sources for all government projects. Huge financial outlay is involved in these plans. In this essay, we will attempt to examine how we can deal with corruption at the planning level itself, that is in our 12th 5-year plan. Now, India's 12th 5-year plan will focus on policy and governance issues. Same time, it targets a sustainable economic growth of 9 to 9.5%. It gives a priorities to the common man's needs of health, education and water. Now let us see the major issues involved in the 12th 5-year plan. Public thinking of corruption as a major problem and an issue has increased. It is because of greater awareness and increased transparency and also the media. Now, how to deal and eliminate corruption in the development projects which have become a source for corruption at various levels. That is an issue. The aspect remains an issue for which the existing systems do not seem to provide a solution. Planning documents prepared by the Planning Commission should have dealt with this issue. That would have made a good beginning to deal with corruption issue. However, Planning Commission is not perceived as an organization that has done a great work on corruption. If we see the approach paper to the 12th 5-year plan, it states poor governance leads to corruption. That is all a passing remark that the Planning Commission has made, and it has not dealt the corruption issue at all beyond this point. Now, corruption occurs in many forms, all of which breaks the confidence of the citizen in the quality of governance. Large-scale corruption occurs either because of mishandling of government contracts or because of discretionary decisions, and many reforms such as the abolition of industrial licensing and import licensing have actually ended corruption in the areas where it was earlier widely prevalent. This we have learned by experience. Rapid economic growth has caused sharp increase in the value of scarce resources. The most cited causes of corruption. Now let us see various possible causes of corruption. They include the absence of rules, regulations, policies and legislation. Second is the weak system of enforcement. Then comes the weak systems of oversight, that is absence of watchdog institutions like Loka Ayuktas, and many states don't have Loka Ayuktas at all. Then comes the lack of accountability on the part of the executive bodies and the heads of the departments, and also lack of transparency in the entire process. Further, the lack of checks and balances in the system, that is institutional weaknesses in the legislative and judicial systems. Further, lack of integrity on the part of the personnel involved. Also, the monopoly of power that exists with the institutions and in some persons. High degree of discretion or indiscretion involved. The low salaries of the people who are dealing with execution. High rewards are there for the people who take risk of taking bribes, and also finally the low detection rate against the persons who are indulging in corrupt practices. Now we'll have to try to prevent corruption through further simplification procedures. and also strengthen the mechanism for dealing with the corruption. This is a straightforward, simple solution. The institutions such as the Lokapal, Lokayuktas are relevant and important in this context. Corruption associated with the government contracts can be minimized by restructuring government procedures. Corruption between the Aam Aadmi and the government is a common source of public unhappiness. It is important that systems for delivery of public service should be made citizen-friendly and time-bound. This requires reforms in the implementing agencies, and it should include the state governments where most of the public services are delivered at the grassroots level. Information and communication technology can play a major role in achieving these results. A citizen chart which lays down the quality standards in delivery of services will help greatly. Now, let us focus on the institutions and mechanisms of corruption associated with the delivery of public goods and services. Number one, there is the Central Act, that is the Right to Information Act, that was enacted in 2005. This act extends to the whole of India except the state of Jammu and Kashmir. This followed the state level laws and the movement spearheaded by Mazdoor Kisan Shakti Sangatana in 1990s. Meanwhile, there have been a skepticism about the quality of information disseminated through the Right to Information Act. There are also reservations about applications and exclusions that have been permitted in the Act. There have been instances of Right to Information activists actually having been murdered. Same time, there have been several success stories because of right to information. They are not many, but they are significant on this issue. Now, the second type of mechanisms and institutions we can think of. Now, the second type of institutions and mechanisms we can think is the citizen charters. Citizen charters was an initiative launched in 1997. They resulted from Chief Ministers' Conference way back in May 1997, where action plan for effective responsive government at the center and the states level was adopted. They are not only about the central government and its ministries and departments, but also extend to the state governments. Now, the third mechanism is the Lokayukta institution. Now, the states like Karnataka have had a Lokayukta since long time. The Karnataka Lokayukta Act was passed way back in 1984, and the first Administrative Reforms Commission, which submitted a report in 1966, in fact had recommended that anti-corruption ombudsman should be set up at the center and in the states. This would be called Lokapal at the center and Lokayukta in the states. However, the recommendations of Lokayukta are not mandatory. They do not have power to punish. Karnataka spearheaded Lokayukta movement and was able to expose corruption and punish even the ruling chief minister. But it suffered a setback in the last few years, especially when it came to the light that the Lokayukta's son himself was deeply involved in extortion racket from the government officers. The state government is now, that is in December 2015, is in the process of removing Lokayukta and also amend the existing Lokayukta Act. This, many fear that it will make a Lokayukta Act toothless and make the Lokayukta institution totally ineffective. Now, the fourth mechanism is the Whistleblowers Protection Act. The Whistleblowers Protection Act of 2011 is an act which provides a mechanism to investigate alleged corruption and misuse of power by public servants. It also protects anyone who exposes the alleged wrongdoing in government bodies, projects, and offices. The wrongdoing takes the form of a fraud, corruption, or mismanagement. The Act will also ensure punishment for false or frivolous complaints. The Act came into force from 2014. There have been high-profile instances of whistleblowers like Satyendra and Shanmugam Manjunath. Shanmugam Manjunath was murdered, though Shanmugam Manjunath was not quite a whistleblower in the normal sense. Now, this Whistleblowers Protection Act is fairly commonly used in the countries like USA, UK, Australia, and New Zealand, which they protect the whistleblowers effectively. Fifth is the initiatives like the Zero Rupee Note. There have been initiatives like the Zero Rupee Note. This was created by an NGO named Fifth Pillar. These are meant for public servants who demand bribes for public services. They have evidently been successful in reducing the corruption in cities like Chennai, Bangalore, and Hyderabad. In similar vein, there have been a Jagore campaign of Tata Tea and Janagraha and the I Paid Bribe campaign. Sixth is the initiatives like the Citizen Report Cards of Public Affairs Centre, Bangalore. The use of Citizen Report Cards have led to the improvements in the quality of service delivery and reduction in corruption. The Citizen Report Cards are widely reported in the newspapers quite often. Now, seventh is the Public Service Guarantee Act. In this context, Madhya Pradesh can be said to be a pioneer in enacting a Public Service Guarantee Act in 2010. For some public services like birth certificate, caste certificate, domicile certificate, water supply, khasra copies and death certificate, etc., this piece of legislation has timelines for delivery. If there is a delay in delivering the service, a fine is imposed on the relevant officer. Jammu and Kashmir, Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh, Himachal Pradesh, Delhi, Uttar Pradesh, Punjab and Karnataka have followed this suit, and there may also be a central law along the similar lines. Now, the important question is there any decline in the petty corruption in public life? Maybe yes, but where fresh public expenditure provides a new avenues for corruption, it is possibly true that the public monopolies have been destroyed. This has offered a choice and private sector delivery. It is a fact that monopoly situation creates a fertile ground for systematizing the corruption. There has been a constant pressure by civil society, and it changes the demand, triggering a pressure for better quality of public goods and services. It is very unfortunate that despite the several recommendations, nothing has significantly changed, nor have there been any improvements on the anti-corruption legal machinery. The interface between the citizen and the government for petty kinds of corruption is at the level of local body, but they do not seem to have enough power to deal with such acts then and there itself. With a proper decentralized planning and also transfer of suitable powers to the local bodies, lots of questions can be answered by the local bodies. Now let us conclude the antidotes to the corruption. First, there is an issue of reforming the civil services. It includes codes of conduct, adequate salaries, entry and promotions. Further, laws against corruption must be credible. Secondly, this implies the existence of independent anti-corruption bodies. Third, the monopoly in providing public services will have to be ended by enabling a private sector delivery mechanisms. Fourth, public procurement needs to become much more transparent. Fifth, countervailing the pressure must be created by the civil society, and which in turn requires awareness and dissemination of information.